All right, welcome to another episode of Piecing It Together, the podcast where we take a look at a new movie and try to figure out what movies inspired it. And today on the show, we are talking about Ben Affleck's return to the director chair. We are talking Air, the true story about Nike signing Michael Jordan for the Air Jordans. And I'm a big fan of Ben Affleck as a director, and so I was really looking forward to this one. And it delivered for the most part. And we've got a great conversation coming up. Joining me over an awesome movie year this past week, we actually just covered Ben Affleck's Argo, which was the Best Picture winner in 2012, the year that Awesome Movie Year is currently covering. So, because we just did that, I've got Josh Bell and Jason Harris with me to talk Air. So we got a great conversation, all three of us getting into some puzzle pieces, and that is coming up here in a second. Before we get to it, I do want to remind you, as always, to make sure you're subscribed to Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts. You can follow us on social media at PiecingPod and join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, where we continue the conversation about all the movies we talk about here on the show. Last but not least, I do want to let you know we have a Patreon. If you never heard about the Patreon before, it's called the Produced by David Rosen Patreon, which combines bonus content from Piecing It Together, Awesome Movie Year. We're actually about to record a new Patreon exclusive episode here in a week or so, I think, for Awesome Movie Year, but also have a bunch of Piecing It Together episodes that haven't been released yet, sitting there waiting for specific dates to release, and you can hear them early. Also, lots of stuff from my music career, so check it out if you are interested in getting all of that content. It's patreon.com/bydavidrosen. Now, with that said, let's talk about Air. All right, Josh Bell and Jason Harris are with us together. The Awesome Movie Year guys. How you guys doing?
We can't escape each other.
You know, the thing is, they said we want to do a big crossover situation for Sweeps Week, and here we are. You know,
Sweeps Week.
We did
podcast Sweeps Week.
Right.
Oh,
so
yeah.
we did a Awesome Movie Year with the three of us. Now we're doing a Piecing It Together, and the network says they're expecting big numbers, guys.
Yeah, well, they're about to have their expectations not met.
Dang it, Josh.
Oh, yeah. So the reason we're doing this today is because we just covered Ben Affleck's Argo on the 2012 season of Awesome Movie Year. We also had previously covered Gone Baby Gone on the 2007 season of Awesome Movie Year. So we figured who better to have on Piecing It Together to talk about Ben Affleck's return to the director chair for Air. Hopefully Jason could pick up the slack as a sports guy since me and Josh don't know anything.
Yeah, I can handle it. You know, I know you called me in for that reason, and also
Yes.
because Matt Damon dropped out. So, you know, I'll do my best to fill the shoes, and we'll see what we can deal with. Yeah, I mean, so it's funny because, you know, it's really the story of Sonny Vaccaro here, who kind of spearheads this movement with Nike to say, like, let's go all in on Michael Jordan. And my guess is you guys never heard of Sonny Vaccaro before, right?
No, not at all.
No.
I had heard the name Phil Knight, but not Sonny Vaccaro, though.
Yeah, Phil Knight, obviously, you know, the founder of Nike, but major figure who Affleck plays. Sonny Vaccaro was someone who used to go to basketball camps. He was like a huge name. Like he could help broker deals to get players, you know, to colleges, and like one of these kind of like kingmakers of the high school basketball scene. And, you know, ended up working with a lot of different I think he had something to do with the Adidas ABCD camp and all this stuff. So he was in that world for a long time, but it's such a specific world, right, that I could see why that would be someone whose name you wouldn't know.
Yeah, and they do mention those basketball camps briefly in this film, as I think Phil Knight mentions it as something that he kind of started to promote Nike.
Yeah, so I went to 5 Star, which was like one of these big time camps, and then what happened is shoe companies started to come in, and then there was the Nike camp and the Adidas ABCD camp, and those were like for the best of the best of the best type players.
So you didn't attend those camps?
Josh, that was not me. I felt like I career rounded out nicely, and now I've rounded out nicely. So.
Oh,
very good. I like that.
But he's, I mean, Sonny Vaccaro was like, we see it in this film, like briefly at the beginning, but he was a Vegas guy a lot too, as well.
Gambler, a shaker, a mover and a shaker. Who knows? I don't think that necessarily everything he did was on the level, but again, he was fighting against the NCAA and nothing they do is on the level. So like the enemy of my enemy type thing, I guess you would say. Although Sonny Vaccaro wasn't really an enemy. He just didn't believe in the system. But I guess, and this really has nothing to do with anything other than the fact that Matt Damon, jacked up movie star, did a great job of portraying this kind of like kind of guy who just needed to find his way and, you know, had the paunch belly and didn't want to ever run on the track. And I just thought he did a good job with that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and I don't know much about like Vaccaro, like you were saying that we probably wouldn't have heard his name, but like he is like obviously this is the Nike movie, it's the Michael Jordan movie, but it's like he is a really great character to kind of build a movie around. He's such a go-getter, and it's an exciting story.
I actually think there's more that they could do. He has led an interesting life. They could probably do another different chapter of his life, but that's not why we're here, Dave. We're here to talk about the pieces that together might influence the film Air.
Yes, some
Jason has taken over hosting this podcast.
Some might call them puzzle pieces. Jason, since you're so eager, what's your first puzzle piece here?
Oh man, you're putting me on the spot. I'm gonna take one right from Josh just to kick him right in the stomach.
Thank you, Jason.
It's a Steven Soderbergh film called High Flying Bird, and it's all about the business of basketball and getting the best deals. And you barely ever see any basketball in it. And you could also throw a Hustle in there, the Adam Sandler movie, which had a lot more basketball in it, but was really about the business. But I thought Soderbergh's High Flying Bird and the backroom machinations and the wheeling and dealing reminded me of this play to get Michael Jordan to sign with Nike when Converse and Adidas were the kind of powerhouses of the brands and the industry.
Yeah, and Jason, I know like you don't really like that movie, but I love it. So I'm glad that you brought it up.
Well, that's so crazy to me, Josh, because I wanted you to be angry. No, I'm just kidding. What's crazy is, I love Steven Soderbergh and I love basketball and I love these kind of like wheeling dealing business movies or shows like Succession, right? Which I guess you could even say is a puzzle piece if you want to. But yeah, that one I didn't really love, but I would say that would be worth a rewatch for me.
Yeah, I hope you would appreciate it on a rewatch. I definitely like that a lot, and I remember that came on the heels of a couple of Soderbergh sort of quasi comeback movies that a lot of people loved that I didn't love when he did Logan Lucky and Unsane, and I was happy to watch High Flying Bird and really like it. I think another thing that is key, like influence-wise in these two movies, is that they're both about this kind of, back and forth negotiation that results in the athletes getting like a much greater payout,
Yeah, sure.
And in High Flying Bird, it's set up almost like a heist movie. So you don't know exactly what the end game is. But it turns out to be basically that Andre Holland's agent character is getting better compensation and better sort of terms for his clients. And here, of course, we have Viola Davis as Michael Jordan's mother making this groundbreaking deal about his profit participation in the shoes.
And the agents as well, Josh. You mentioned the Andre Holland's character. And in this, it's Super Agent David Falk, played by Affleck favorite Chris Messina, right? There's always it's interesting to watch the conversations. And one of the more fun parts between Falk and Vaccaro, because like Falk is like so tightly wound and everything's at a 10 and his ego is so out of control. Whereas Vaccaro's just like holding on by a string and finds the humor in all of these ridiculous situations.
Those scenes played so well at the theater. Everybody was just going nuts for every single moment when the two of them were going at each other. And it was really fun. I think that's going to stand out for probably the rest of the year. I think people will be talking about that. It's some of the best stuff at the theater this year. But yeah.
Josh already made this his number one film of 2023.
I liked it, but I would be a bit disappointed if that was the result. That would be a bad year if that's how things played out.
Well, Josh, what do you got for your first piece?
All right. Well, since Jason did take one that I was very excited about, I will pick maybe the most obvious one because I feel like we should talk about it. Is cited in like almost every review that I've read, which is Moneyball, the film about, again, it's about sports, but it's really about negotiation. It's about the executives, the guys in the offices, the backroom dealings. It's a movie about people making phone calls but is really fascinating. And I remember going into that movie and thinking like, not only do I not care about baseball, but I don't care about like statistics. And yet I love that movie. I think it's really fascinating because it shows you a different side of this industry. And that's the same thing here. I think I had a general sense that like, well, obviously athletes endorse sneakers or whatever, but I think I didn't realize just how symbiotic that relationship is between the shoe companies and the professional athlete organizations. And this showed me something that I didn't know about. And the same with Moneyball, and it did it in a really entertaining way.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many layers and so many different relationships, like whether it's from the team to the player to the company, the agents, everyone, and they all kind of have to work together in some way. So definitely.
One of the things, and Josh, I told you about this, and I think Moneyball is an example, Hustle's an example also, is that, and this is like not a criticism, but I think this is one of the things that movies like this have to overcome is like, there's no stakes that mean anything to me because one, we know the results already, and two, it's like, I'm rooting for this rich person against this rich person, right? And it's
Right.
like, that was one of my biggest things with Hustle. They're like, you got to be the number one pick. And I'm like, really? Because if he's the number 3 pick, he's still making millions of bucks and going to be just fine, right? But that's tough for me to get past. But there was enough enjoyable stuff in this movie where I was able to just be like, let's just go for this ride.
Yeah, I agree. But there's definitely, for me, in the back of my mind the whole time, thinking this is just about how this like giant multi-billion-dollar corporation became even more successful already. And yet it's somehow being portrayed as an underdog. That is something.
Right. And, Josh, that's a good point because even in the movie, they were like, oh, our basketball division, look at these players that we're looking at. We have no money. But they make the point that Nike dominates the running sneaker industry already. So, like, there really wasn't as much at stake as like, if we don't hit it this time, basketball's never going to be a Nike thing.
Right. Well, Jason, you stole Josh's High Flying Bird. You also stole my Hustle, which was on my list. So I'll put it on the list anyway. But I'll jump ahead to another probably obvious one, Ford v Ferrari, also starring Matt Damon. But, I've seen the phrase dad movie thrown around a lot with this movie.
Yeah.
And these are both just like amazing dad movies, like just things you could totally picture your dad just loving every minute of. And Carol Shelby, kind of a somewhat similar character to what Matt Damon is doing here and needing to, get these deals together in order to make it all come together. And if he doesn't pull this one off, it's all going to fall apart. And also around sports and everything, like there's just a lot of comparisons that could be made there.
Yeah, I didn't find that as interesting as this film, but
okay.
I know a lot of people liked it.
Just smacked you.
What about you, Jason?
I never saw it. It's on my list of things to see. I don't know why I didn't see it. The heck's my problem?
Well, let's go back to you, Jason. What's your next piece?
Listen, we're talking about money. We have to talk about the movie that is all about money. Greed is good. It's Wall Street. A lot of elements here where it's like, hey, what are the intentions? Why are we doing this? Yes, we're making other people rich that might not have been as rich. But really, in the end, it comes down to everyone wanting their windfall, right? And there is an element of greed is good, but there's also the element of like, hey, man, this is the guy who's going to put you on the map, so pay him like he's going to put you on the map. But, the money is the impetus of so much of this project. And honestly, the stuff going on behind the scenes with this project, with this new company that Affleck and Damon have formed to kind of help get more equity for the participants, right? So, which might be an anti-Wall Street thing. But it's interesting because you look at that, you look at the background, you look at the fact that this is an Amazon movie and this is eventually going to be just swallowed by the corporation and put on that streaming platform. And I just thought there were a lot of elements here that Gordon Gekko would appreciate.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, Gordon Gekko is sort of a villain though, isn't he? And I think we're meant to like all these Nike people, even if we, would take a second to reflect on the fact that they're just these giant rich capitalists, but they're meant to be likable.
I agree. I think maybe they made Phil Knight look a little like kind of like in his own orbit, so to speak, right? But definitely the Vicario character and the Bateman character, who they even give a monologue to talk about why Nike is saving his relationship with his daughter.
Right. I mean, it really is. Like, if you could boil this movie down to 30 seconds, it could be a Nike commercial.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I listen to The Big Picture. I love that podcast. And now they're talking about like, are we in the point where brands are movies and movies are brands and that's it? Is this the next evolution? And we hope there's more to it. But I just wanted to add one more thing because we mentioned those three. We mentioned a lot of the actors. One actor I didn't mention, Chris Tucker, who steals every scene he's in this movie. And I was watching it with my friend and I turned to him like, this guy's too good not to be doing more movies. He's really good in this movie.
But he seems to just kind of do whatever he feels like. I don't know if he was like friends with Ben Affleck or something that he got convinced to be in this film, but he just seems to be off in his own little bubble there.
He really does. It seems like he's kind of just taken that, like he was so big for that moment after Rush Hour, and he was just like, I'm just going to do whatever the hell I want for the rest of my life.
But okay, so that's a good point with Rush Hour and everything and huge hits. We know that. Like, but I think you see like how much more he has to offer.
Sure.
When something like this, and I just want to see him keep giving us those surprise performances.
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally.
Josh, what do you got next?
Well, I will have to give credit to numerous people on Letterboxd and Twitter who made the pun of "we bought a shoe" and go with "we bought a zoo." And it's not just because of the pun or just because of Matt Damon, although there are those aspects too. But that movie is, I mean, it's more sentimental than this movie, although there's a lot of sentimental stuff in this movie for a movie about a big shoe company. I feel like Cameron Crowe could have almost made this movie. He would have, like, all the needle drops in this film, all the 80s music.
Certainly the needle drops.
Yeah. So, I mean, We Bought a Zoo, but again, it's based on a true story. It's sort of this, on the one hand, it's like an underdog thing about the family who buy this kind of, older zoo and they have to rehab it and make it into, an attraction. And it also is about grief and whatever. But on the other hand, it's like, if you can buy a zoo, you're probably doing okay. So I think there's that level of it too. I know there's a movie that is like, I mean, the reason I think people make that pun is because that movie has, and its title have become kind of a joke, but I have a soft spot for it.
It was good. It was an underrated film. I mean, I think, the natural next move is to combine these two for a franchise, and we make shoes for animals.
Totally.
That sounds wonderful. I've actually never seen it. Should I see that movie one of these days?
Yeah, it's not bad.
I mean, again, I feel like it's sort of unfairly maligned because of its Cameron Crowe-ness, and it's sappy, but in like a way that didn't, to me, feel manipulative.
It's a tough movie to pull off, and I thought he pulled it off.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, speaking of Letterboxd reviews, I saw Josh's Letterboxd review talking about how it's the best shoe commercial that he's ever seen. And that started getting me thinking about other movies that feel like just a big commercial. And then because of Super Mario Brothers blowing up this weekend, I thought of the 1989 movie The Wizard, which I actually almost picked for my Dave's pick on our 89 season of Awesome Movie Year, but I haven't seen since back then. I loved it back then, but just a crowd pleaser that is designed to just play huge in the theater and is obviously all about a major brand that everybody knows and loves already. And just The Wizard, I doubt holds up very well, but I wanted to use it anyway.
I would like to rewatch it. I actually thought about this for this too. Obviously, the difference is like that Mario was already such a massive, huge hit, whereas like Nike basketball was just trying to find its way. But I did think about that. And Jimmy Woods.
Yeah, that was at a time, like in a brief period where I was kind of into video games, and I did see that as a kid, and I think I liked it. But I'm with you, Dave. I doubt it holds up. And wasn't that like, I might be wrong about this, but wasn't part of the point of The Wizard that they literally like used it to introduce the Power Glove?
Yeah.
Power Glove
and Super Mario Brothers 3. Yeah.
More importantly, Mario 3.
Yeah.
Right. Well, yeah, the Power Glove was a big flop.
Yeah.
But yeah. I mean, and the other thing about that movie is that it was actually produced like by Nintendo. I don't know what, if any, official relationship Nike has to this film.
Right.
Oh my God, if this is where it's all going.
It is. We have this whole trend. We got the Flamin' Hot Cheetos movie coming out.
Right.
I feel like there's at least one other.
Yeah, Blackberry.
There is at least one other.
Yeah, Blackberry. There you go.
movie.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's been a lot of docus on Netflix that are 4 parts about this and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Josh, Dave, I'm going to go into my next pick here. You mentioned Cameron Crowe. I had a different Cameron Crowe movie, which was Jerry Maguire.
Sure.
Of course, the it's not just the sports agenting and the deal making, and I think that was like really on, but also I thought the interstitials here with Phil Knight like laying out the rules reminded me of the old agent giving you the different rules of, good agenting. So this is Cameron Crowe written all over it, bro.
Absolutely.
It does.
Yeah, that's another movie that I haven't seen in forever, but I've been wanting to rewatch since last year, with Maverick and everything and being on the Tom Cruise train. But yeah, that seems like a really good
character.
one. Well,
Maverick is in a plane, not a train.
Yeah.
Good point. Good point.
Yeah.
Thank you. Josh, what do you got next?
What do I got? Oh, is it my turn? Okay. All right. I'll stick with the sports and go with King Richard, the film about Richard Williams starring Will Smith, which I did not like, and was one of the few that didn't like it. But I feel like it was an interesting contrast. I mean, first of all, there's the idea that, and one of the things they do with Michael Jordan here is we never really see him or hear him. He's kind of this off-screen figure. And that's not the case for the Williams sisters in that movie. But still, it's the idea that like, here's a movie featuring some or one of the like most famous athletes of all time, but it's not really about that person. It's about like a support person. Here it's about the Nike guys, but it's also about Michael Jordan's mother, played by Viola Davis. And, the idea here is that she is really looking out for his best interests, and she's kind of taking point on these negotiations. And the ultimate result that he gets this profit participation, which was this revolutionary thing, is something that comes from her. And, I think that's kind of what they're trying to do in King Richard as well, to prop him up as this guy who made all these great decisions for his daughters. And I guess the difference was in this movie, I thought, yeah, Michael Jordan's mom, go Mrs. Jordan. I like you. You're smart. You're doing the right thing for your son. And in King Richard, I hated him and I thought he was a horrible father. Yeah. But I feel like there's similar things going on.
Yeah, I agree. It's a great piece. I hadn't thought of that, but that it really is kind of two sides of that coin. And what about you, Jason? Have you seen King Richard?
No, Dave, I haven't. And to tell you the truth, probably not going to run out to the Will Smith parade anytime soon.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, he's also doing, I guess, an accurate but very distracting accent in the film.
Well, I will go with one of the obvious ones when talking about these true stories of brands, but The Social Network, specifically, though, because of just how many characters we're following here. There's so many major players in this story, from, you're just talking about Viola Davis's character, Jordan's mom, and then, Jordan himself just being in the background there, to everybody at Nike and everybody, the guy who's designing the shoe, Matthew Mayer, I believe his name is, the actor.
Yeah, he's great.
He's so funny. Just so many characters in The Social Network as well. You have the Winklevoss twins and Justin Timberlake as Sean Parker, Andrew Garfield, and there's just all these different characters, and you just get like a big tapestry of all these people who made this thing happen.
Totally.
Yeah, that guy is another Affleck favorite and is in maybe all of the other Affleck movies.
Definitely Gone Baby Gone. I think maybe The Town as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think he was he in Argo? I mean, we just watched Argo.
Not Argo,
I don't recall
but
him being in it.
Yeah, I think all the other ones, possibly even Live by Night.
He is also in the latest Ben Affleck Dunkin' Donuts commercial.
Nice. Right on.
Interesting.
Yeah. Haven't seen that one yet.
Check it out.
Can you do an impression of it was a Casey Affleck who did the Dunkin' Donuts SNL skit. Yeah, that's a classic. Watch that.
Is great.
Oh yeah.
Dunkin'.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, that's my last piece. Do you guys have any other pieces you wanted to bring up?
I want to just say, and this was a tough one to figure out. I was trying to think of like, what's a movie that kind of represents streetwear or something that brought, culture to the streets and everything, or showcased that element. And going on the complete opposite end of what Michael Jordan did here. So through my research, I look back and I know it's not the same, but if you look at something like Rebel Without a Cause and everything it did for like the fashion of the kids at the time, I felt that was like a kind of something, whether you want to say that or you want to pick another movie, just something that really influenced the fashion of the time, because the Jordans changed the way that, fashion was worn and how basketball sneakers became, culturally significant beyond the court.
Right. I mean, I feel like is the movie itself going to have that kind of influence though?
No, but I'm saying I wanted to I see what you're saying. You're saying I should have picked a movie about another fashion item that somehow got, or like about a pop cultural instance that kind of influenced fashion of some type.
I mean, you should pick whatever you want. I was just asking a question.
I could see people dressing up as Ben Affleck's Phil Knight for Halloween this year.
That was pretty good. Yeah. So,
yeah.
maybe it wasn't accurate, but I think there's something to be said about how the shoe changed street culture and what is the equivalent of another movie of blank changed street culture.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And I mean, I assume that Air Jordans are still quite popular. I don't know if this movie is a big enough success, if that would like rejuvenate their popularity, or if that they would even need that.
There's nothing to rejuvenate.
Yeah, that's
billions a year. I'm sure.
I wasn't saying like this movie will rejuvenate it. I'm saying
right.
There's no need for it. That's why they're so popular. They made a movie about it. I'm just saying
they did.
I was trying to find another item that there was a movie about that.
Right.
But hey, what do I know?
I understand what you're saying.
It's good stuff.
Trying to further our discussion of it.
Stop it.
Josh, anything else you want to throw in there?
I have a bunch more, but I don't need to run through everything. And some of them are very similar to kind of what we talked about. But I'll just mention two things. One, and you brought up The Social Network, and that's Aaron Sorkin. And so another Aaron Sorkin thing that I thought of was Charlie Wilson's War. And the idea, obviously, the war there is a much bigger deal than Air Jordans, although maybe you could argue that it's on the same level in some ways, but I think the point.
I'm not going to do that.
All right. I mean, there's a large like cultural global influence. I'm not going to do it either, but the point being that is a movie about this major global thing, but it's really about like the backroom dealings of it and how these kind of not well-known eccentric figures were the movers and shakers behind this huge thing that everyone knows about. Everyone knows Air Jordans, even if you're not a basketball fan or whatever.
Yeah.
But you don't know Sonny Vaccaro, you don't know Phil Knight necessarily, or even Michael Jordan's mom. So that, and of course, I feel like I'm glad Aaron Sorkin of 2023 did not write this film, but I do feel like this is an Aaron Sorkin-esque story or whatever, that they're aiming for some of those rhythms.
Yeah, absolutely. He seems to be playing in that kind of ballpark there, and it's like a lot of really interesting characters, all with very fun scenes and all that. But yeah, it thankfully doesn't get into that Sorkin territory though. So yeah.
And just to finish the whole like corporate branding movies, I wanted to mention The Founder, the movie about the founding of McDonald's.
That was on my list as well as one of the ones I might have brought up. But definitely, I mean, it fits in there, especially given the time period.
Yeah. So that's all I'll say about that.
Yeah, McDonald's changed streetwear.
Yes, it did. Sure. You get the big red shoes that are very popular. I will read down our finished puzzle list here, and we'll get into some closing thoughts. We talked about High Flying Bird, Moneyball, Hustle, Ford v. Ferrari, Wall Street, We Bought a Zoo, The Wizard, Jerry Maguire, King Richard, The Social Network, Rebel Without a Cause, Charlie Wilson's War. Yeah, maybe Rebel Without a Cause. And The Founder, of course. Any closing thoughts? Anything, Josh? We'll go with you first.
No, I liked it. I mean, I think the praise for it has maybe been a little overstated. But it's a very, like I said on Letterboxd, it's a shoe commercial, but it's certainly the best shoe commercial I've ever watched, and I really enjoyed it. I kind of would be disappointed if this was a big best of the year frontrunner by the end of the year, just because I hope for better stuff. But I'm happy to see it succeed. In a week when we also had a brand extension in the Super Mario Brothers movie, which I know, Dave, that you loved.
Oh, let's not go that far. I'm
glad that this movie found a little room for its success as well.
Sure.
Yeah, it's so funny to me because like this movie is like made for me, right? Like it's basketball, it's wheeling dealing, it's all these actors that I like, it's Affleck directing in a very fast-paced thing. I mean, the whole closing montage is to Born in the USA. Like, what more could I ask for, right? But I like it. I don't love it. I don't like a lot of people really are praising it as like, oh, it's going to be up for Best Picture and this and that. I think it's just a good, fun movie and totally worth a watch. But but what's funny, Josh, is like You're like, finally, like a cool adult drama, right? That sweet $30 million movie that we're missing. But of course, it's $90 million because you look at
Yeah,
all
but
those
hey,
pieces.
whatever. If Amazon wants to pay for it, at least we got it. At least it was made.
Yeah, I agree.
Got to pay for those needle drops. But
yeah, totally.
I feel like, would I be right in saying, in you guys' opinion, that like the problem with the movie is the lack of stakes? Like it never really feels like it's not going to work out. And obviously we know how it goes, but it never feels like it's not going to work out.
I think that's something.
Yeah, because like we know the stakes. I mean, we know what's going to happen in Argo.
Yeah.
But Argo really ratchets up, and we talk about it in our episode of Awesome Movie, or they do a great job of keeping that tension going. So.
Yeah, I mean, and I do think for me, a big thing of it is that like I can't really entirely get over the idea that this is just about a big company that fucks people over and dominates our culture in many ways and is presented as an underdog. And I can't 100% buy into it, even though I like buy into the movie, but because it's this true story that like you can't get rid of that larger context.
Yeah. Do you guys wear Nikes?
I don't, but not for like any protest reasons.
I'm a New Balance guy.
No, I wear Nike Frees, which are the opposite of stuff like this. The like closest thing to barefoot possible.
Oh,
so
very nice.
Unrelated, Viola Davis, home run every time out.
Oh yeah, she's very good in this, definitely. And she's, there were a lot of these are characters who are sort of, glib and Sorkin-y in their own way. I mean, and she's always like, oh, here's some like human emotion that's going on in this film as well.
I also really liked the husband. I really liked Jordan's dad. He's great.
Yeah, the James Jordan character. Did you think I thought it was interesting the fact that they like barely showed Michael Jordan. Like, I don't think we ever saw his face in the movie.
No,
right?
not at all.
Right.
Yeah.
No, and that's clearly a choice. And I think Ben Affleck said something along the lines of that, like, he's not the right filmmaker to make a movie about like Michael Jordan's life. And I think that's fair to recognize, like, that's, sort of not my wheelhouse or whatever. I did want to mention one other thing, and I was trying to think of a puzzle piece that might relate to this. And I don't know if there are other movies that do this, but I thought like stylistically, one of the most fascinating things is when Matt Damon gives this big speech, Sonny Vaccaro gives this big speech about sort of like speculating about the future of Michael Jordan's career, which he's all, of course, like 100% right about. And as he does that, they intercut that with real footage of Michael Jordan from throughout his career, like up until the present day. And I just thought that was a really interesting, unexpected choice. And I don't recall ever seeing any other movie do that in that particular way. And I thought it was really cool.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I thought it's different, but there was definitely a noticeable kind of stylistic change when Vaccaro goes to meet George Raveling, who Marlon Wayans does a great George Raveling impression here. And, there's a little floaty in this throughout the movie, but here, this is very handheld and very kind of more raw and visceral. And I don't know. That was an interesting choice for that because that was like a real kind of fun, uplifting story. It wasn't like a down, you got to dig deep. You got to get that grit, which you would think might be lend itself to that style of camera work. So,
yeah, no, that's an interesting choice. And, maybe in the postscript, don't they say about how like they credited that meeting as like such a major part of all of this being able to come together. So maybe that's the reason for the difference in the way that's filmed. But that's a good point, though. Last question, we'll kind of close this thing up, but where does this fall? As long as we're doing this as a crossover event with Argo, where does this fall in you guys' Affleck rankings as a director?
Okay, I can answer that. It's 4 out of 5 for me, but that's not a knock on it. It's just that Argo is so good, so that's 1. Then I would put probably Gone Baby Gone at 2. The Town at 3, but the Town's really good also, right?
Yeah.
So this falls right underneath that, and I like this movie. Live by Night, we're going to say is an aberration, and we can just scratch that one altogether.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I might rank it basically the same. I might rank Gone Baby Gone above Argo. I really like that a lot when watching it again, but I will say that it's a testament to how consistent Affleck is that I even like Live by Night. I'm one of the only people who thinks that movie is good. And I still would put that as number 5 and put this maybe a little bit above it. Like, he's really, really solid. And I think that's one of the reasons where like you come into this movie and you think, really, there's a movie about that, and Affleck makes it work.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Affleck comeback's in full effect.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I hope so.
I can't wait to see what else he does. But I'd be in the exact same spot as Josh. I put Gone Baby Gone at the top, but then everything else the same ranking as both of you. But I think that does it for Air. you guys want to recommend movies you watched recently? We don't usually do that on a 2-guest episode, but if you got stuff you want to shout out.
Josh, what'd you watch?
Yeah, I just realized that we might do that, so I was like frantically looking stuff up on Letterboxd. So I will recommend a new movie that I enjoyed, which is called Rye Lane. It's a British romantic comedy that's currently on Hulu. It was a big thing at the Sundance Film Festival earlier this year, and it's not like reinventing the form necessarily. Plot wise, is like two people kind of have this little meet cute, and they spend the whole day hanging out together and getting to know each other. But it's visually very creative. It's a real showcase for this like neighborhood in South London. The acting, both of the stars are really charming. It's funny, and it's 82 minutes long, which I love. And it's just a nice feel-good romantic comedy that you can watch at home on Hulu. So Rye Lane.
I'm excited to watch Rye Lane, to be honest with you. I've been more watching stuff like TV stuff lately, Josh. So I'm looking at my Letterboxd and I see Dirty Work, watched last month, the old Norm Macdonald movie,
Yeah.
which is really an anti-movie if you watch it. He really just lets scenes go on too long just to get jokes in, and really just plays with the form in a fun way. So I'm going to say go back and watch Dirty Work again.
I completely agree. Everybody should do that. It's so good. Plugs. Let's go with you, Josh. What do you got?
Well, we got Awesome Movie Year. Come on. It's Awesome Movie Year. It's awesome, and it's a podcast about movie years.
Yes, it
is. We are doing our season on 2012. We had our Argo episode recently, maybe, depending on when this comes out. And we got more cool stuff from that coming up. We're kind of getting toward the end of that, but had a lot of interesting discussions there. So awesomemovieyear.com. Awesome Movie Year on Facebook and Instagram, Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter. Check us out in all those places and wherever you listen to podcasts. My stuff, not much of it really at joshbellhateseverything.com, but also Josh Bell Hates Everything on Facebook, at Signal Bleed on Twitter, and at Signal Bleed on Letterboxd. And if you're here in Vegas, check me out on KTMV Channel 13 on Fridays at 11 a.m.
Yeah, go visit Josh at his house. He loves visitors.
You can see my couch every week on TV. It's great.
Jason, how about you?
That is everything Josh said.
Cool. That works.
Yeah, Jason co-signs watching me on TV. Thank you, Jason.
Watch Josh on TV. I'm with it.
Perfect. All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for doing the show, and I look forward to next time.
Yeah.
I'm Josh Bell.
And I'm Jason Harris, and we co-host a podcast called Awesome Movie Year.
Each season, we take a look back at an awesome year for movies, which is every year.
We deep dive into these specific years, and we pick out why they were such great years for films. We go over the biggest hits, the biggest flops, the best picture, some personal picks, some cult classics.
Years we've covered in past seasons include 1994, 2003, 1977, and 1984, and we've got all of film history to look forward to. So check us out at awesomemovieyear.com or wherever you listen to podcasts.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that conversation about Air. Thank you to Josh Bell and Jason Harris for joining me on that one. Make sure to go check out our Argo episode of Awesome Movie Year, wherever it is that you listen to podcasts, wherever you're listening to Piecing It Together right now. You can also find Awesome Movie Year. We covered Argo, and a few years ago, we also covered Gone Baby Gone. So lots of Ben Affleck to listen to us talk about. And of course, while you're at it, make sure you're subscribed to Piecing It Together. If you enjoy the show, drop us a 5-star rating and review. I'd really appreciate that. It definitely helps get the word out about the show and gets more people to check it out, which is what we're here for. So also follow us on social media at Piecing Pod. Join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces. I told you at the top of the show about our Patreon, the Produced by David Rosen Patreon. Make sure to check that out if you want to support the show in that way. But, of course, just keep on listening, and I'm happy with that as well. Let's close this out with a piece of music like I always do. I was trying to think if I have anything specifically basketball-related, but I don't think I do. So, instead, I'm just going to go with something good and upbeat. This is a song called Ascend from my album A Different Kind of Dream. Hope you enjoy it, and we'll be back with more Piecing It Together real soon.
an All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.